and welcome back to the transfer show here on Anfield Index. I'm Trev Downey here in my field in beautiful rural Ireland. Of course, I'm joined by the main man when it comes to transfer talk on Anfield Index. That's my mate and yours, Mr. Dave Davis. Lots to talk about today, Dave, to say the least. Some good, some bad, some indifferent. Let's get cracking, I think. Probably the best thing we can do, just get straight into it because there's lots to talk about. And we could start off with some goalkeeper talk because the lad that we've christened Joe has come in the door for about $1.5 million. Alisson was saying things about contract and running the full length of his potential contract, his extension, or the extra year that the club can activate. And we've heard big news about Jaros being in demand with the high-profile Dutch club. So maybe walk us through these keeper stories to start off.
Yeah, a lot of people have almost dismissed this a little bit, but I see this as really good news because we've alluded to this previously. We knew that the Saudis had, touched base, shall we say, with Alisson's camp and seeing, would he consider it, that big money move over there. And there's been question marks with the changes at the club, with Arne Slot coming in at the summer. There was a lot of uncertainty around Alisson, wasn't there? But it seems to be really positive, and he was put up by Brazil. And as he says there on the screen, he was asked directly about his contract. I have 1 year of contract left on 1 more year on a club option. They will probably exercise this option. Too fucking right they will, Alisson. Let's make no mistake about that. And I think about what I have in hand to do a great job. It's a decisive moment in my career when a World Cup is coming, which is all good for us because he's thinking, have a good season at Liverpool, make sure I'm Brazil #1 for that World Cup. Happy days. Also, the extra year. The thing I like about this, Trev, it just feels like those elite players that we have, and we've got 3 elite players, as we know, Alisson, Van Dijk and Salah. This feels now like we've got them all for another 2 years, doesn't it? The backbone of the team. That's a massive positive. Let's not undersell this one little bit at all. And then, the little Joe's cousin, Pesci, he's in there. And it was funny that the interview comments that he gave, that not trying to be disrespectful, but he plays for a Hungarian club, Puskás Academia, who probably a lot of people were like, who are they when they first announced in the club and all that? But it was interesting. He talked about when he was speaking to the club and the representatives, how much data they had on him, how much detail and analysis. So it proper sounds like the laptop geeks are back and in full operation, aren't they? Doing their bits and looking for those gems, looking for those bargains. So that was positive as well. And then Jaros, Vitslav, to be fair, he was 3rd choice last year. He's one of those. He's too good to be a 3rd choice goalkeeper, really. He's talented. We saw that in the few games he played. And Johnny Heitinger's trying to bring him to Ajax with him, isn't he? Talked that there's a loan with an option possibly there. But the info we've got around Jaros is there's a lot of inquiries from quite a few European clubs. So that makes sense for him to go out, doesn't it? Whether it be perm and on loan, they've got Harvey Davis that can step up and qualify as homegrown. You might, even if you've got a 3rd choice, want young Pesci to get minutes on occasions or experience on the bench there as well, because the reports are from his agent that he will be involved with the first team on occasion. So, considering Kelleher went last week, wasn't it? I didn't think we'd be talking about keepers as much, but positive all round for me.
I don't see a bad thing in that. You've mentioned Harvey Davies, who's lurking around there and is highly rated. I think the move for Jaros makes perfect sense. And it may make sense for the club as well, given Mamardashvili in now and Alisson wanting to stay around. You could have quite a disgruntled Mamardashvili if he's not getting an occasional game, or he thinks of himself as #1. He does. So I think it's all very, very healthy. And this new kid in that our Palantir boys have been compiling information on, tremendous work. I think it's all very good. And we wanted to start there because it's actually something definite that's happened, as opposed to the big stories, which are Wirtz and Kirkez. And that's why most people will be listening this evening. We're not going to keep you dangling any longer. We'll get there. But just to be fair, don't shoot any messengers here, because we can only tell you what we know. And we know on this probably as much as everyone else does, Dave, because it has been a hurry up and wait situation. I think it's quite revealing as to the mental stability of a lot of humans who are really rattled by the fact that it's not over the line. You can see the angst coming out in rival fans online. It's wild to watch, with their belittling of Kerkez, or they're sneering at Liverpool actually spending money theoretically. Of course, we all just want to see them do that. I heard you on Big Decisions earlier on talking about how, we could potentially be in a situation where this first little window's over and we've fired 200 million at the wall. And I think you and I would both be very happy if that is the case. What is it that we know is the very latest and most trustworthy info on the Wirtz and Kirkez thing?
Do you know what? With the Wirtz one especially, I'm reminded of the parable of the Jerusalem housewife that was removed from the Bible at the Council of Nicaea, because it involved loaves and fishes being put in front of Jesus and Jesus studying them carefully, and a Jerusalem housewife just shouting at from the back, "Will you fucking get on with it?" And then people were expecting things to sort of accelerate from there, weren't they? And even this today, you have to laugh at this a little bit. Do you remember how it was? We've had 99% done and we've had very close. Today, from Florian Plettenberg, we now advance to very, very close. So, like, literally, the adjectives are still there, people. We're waiting like you, aren't we, for news? And I kind of like her at this a little bit, because one scan of Twitter at times today has seen planes being tracked from Copenhagen, Cologne, Berlin, and all that type of thing. So them boys are doing the good, honest work, which is funny. People are looking for like Bournemouth, Chelsea, but all sorts of things are going on. Like you, we're all waiting. I suppose that the big thing to say is, even digging today, all the news seems to be, it's just expected. It's still when, not if. That, we're just being honest on what we're being told on that. But maybe the other thing, as much as we've talked about window one, I don't think Liverpool give a shit too much, because, to be honest, window one's for the Club World Cup teams, isn't it, really? They need to get it done so they can take them players over to the US and that tournament. If this does go into Wednesday, Thursday, whatever, I don't think Liverpool really give a shit. They're not really concerned about that PR. I mean, I did find it interesting that a few were saying today, like, this is another Caicedo, this is another Zubamendi. It's really not. Caicedo, we came in at the last minute too late, where they'd already agreed the deal with Chelsea. We didn't do any due diligence or anything like that. Zubamendi, it was a bit new for Richard Hughes, wasn't it? And he tried his best. This is different. We know we've had Wirtz over. We've had his family over. They've given their word. Wirtz wants to come to us, clearly. That's why he's turned down City, Bayern, and all the others. So it is completely different. And I totally get people going, this has been going on 87,000 years, because it does feel like it's dragged. But when it does land, let's not let that sour the moment when Liverpool could potentially spend 200 million in one hit, Trev. It's still going to be a massive positive.
Yeah, I think the relevance of this first window ending will come into a conversation in a little while. But on this one, like you say, it's kind of irrelevant. The only thing it's relevant to is our mental health and people wanting to see these things happen. And listen, I don't critique anyone for being frustrated, because it's like having something like lovely dangled in front of you, and you're just in that kind of kind of holding it backstage. So look, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. The fact that there's, as you say, just these increasingly extra bits of very, very close, definitely close, so close. All done bar the shouting, as good as done. All these phrases you see, I think that's actually just adding to people's irritation levels, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, Dave. And it doesn't, let's be honest, it doesn't make it easy for us having to come out here and I'm certainly not justifying anything, but I do think you mentioned Dickie Hughes earlier on, and to be fair to him, I think old Mountain Nonce is about to embarrass a second club because he's clearly a flaky chap. And so I kind of feel like maybe we need to let him off the hook with that. We went all in on this guy, and it turns out he's quite flaky. So I'm just enthused that we're linked with these guys.
Yeah,
it would be a tremendous amount. Let's not put too fine a point on it. It would be a tremendous amount of egg on the face, Dave. We should acknowledge that, shouldn't we? It would be tremendously embarrassing at this point, given recent pursuits and failures, if the Wirtz thing was to not get done. That has to be acknowledged. Wherever people are with the Kirkez thing, I think some people are with the Kirkez thing. That's a lot of money for that kid. So maybe they wouldn't be quite as broken up. But I'm really, really optimistic we get both of them. I love the strategy. But again, it's going to come back, man, to something we need to talk about later on, about where these transfer funds are coming from. And we know funds come from sales. And whether he likes it or not, sadly, it looks like Harvey Elliott's going to be one of those guys in our window, in our shop window. Several comments from the kids seem to suggest it. What's the latest with that? Because we know for a fact you've had it stood up that there are several clubs, Premier League clubs, genuinely interested in him.
Yeah, we mentioned this for a number of weeks, and I get it. He's a popular player. He's got a unique skill set for Liverpool. There's a lot of what you call, and I don't mean this in a derogatory sense, Harvey fanboys, aren't there? There's nothing wrong. People like players. That's not being critical at all. But it's quite clear Arne Slot doesn't fancy him. And he did an interview that came out as weirdly like an old 10:30 embargo last night. Lewis Steele and a few others had the comments, and then the videos dropped as well. And I'd well encourage people, if they're uncertain from what I'm saying, just to watch this video, because he genuinely seems like gutted, Harvey Elliott, as he's talking, almost like on the verge of tears a little bit, which you don't want to see him upset, but I like how much it means to him. He clearly wants to do well at Liverpool, but he's being honest in the fact, and he uses specific terminology where he says, me and my team have had a discussion. Now, you know the team's his dad and his agent, isn't it? There's no doubts about that, about what's happening. And he also speaks about, I'm going to be 23 soon. I can't afford to waste years. It's a short career, which also answers the question as in, would he be happy doing another season of what happened last season? It's clear the answer is no. He wants to play now, and it's understandable. And the reason he's, you don't want to be cynical, but let's just say he's in the England under-21 Euro squad, isn't he? And they play their first game in 3 days' time, Trev. So it's a good little shop window time for him, isn't it, there as well, just to remind people that he is available at the same time. There is Premier League interest as well. I mean, Wirtz is set to come. There's other midfielders. It's not being derogatory about Harvey. I think everyone is now going to be absolutely astonished if Harvey Elliott is at Liverpool by the start of next season.
Yeah, it seems that he will be one of the people who will be adding to that list of incomings that will hopefully offset the outgoings. And just on that, Dave, and I see there's a lot of chat on the side there in the sidebar, and I understand that like people are all different levels of annoyed or patient. Everyone's all across that spectrum. But I would say to you that I don't think it's very helpful. Someone said about, I wish we were just quiet about it, like, Edwards used to operate. I don't think it's very helpful to have these constant reports that are saying, the latest Liverpool slightly increased offer has been rejected. The latest Liverpool offer has been, it just feels, doesn't it, like it's an unnecessary bit of theatre that we could all do without. I don't understand what possible benefit there is for anyone in this. You know that it's going to absolutely send lads wild if it ends up being a thing that it doesn't get done, because the narrative has already been established that Liverpool are lowballing with each offer. Yeah. But surely, Dave, that's a negotiation. I just don't think every step of that negotiation should be thrown out there to the public. I don't think it's helpful at all.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I also think, and it's funny, we've got Plettenberg on the screen. Well, Mr. Wirtz embarrassed him with the number 10 claim, doesn't he? So that was proven to be false and nonsense. So I think sometimes, not trying to say people are outright whatevers, but people have got column inches to fill, haven't they? Or clicks to grab, however you want to put it on that. So that comes into a factor. What I also like about our business so far, there's two bits that have really stood out for me above anything, Trev. Number one, until it happened, no one had Wirtz coming over to Liverpool, did they, on the plane and the secret meeting until after it happened and the pitch. So Liverpool can still do stuff in the shadows. And the second thing that proved that as well is, do you remember as it came out this week from David Ornstein and a few others, that Arne Slot went to the south of France to see Rayan Cherki, didn't he, before they committed to this as well. So Liverpool can still move in the shadows, which also tells me a little bit that I think some of these reports, they're not really that bothered, or they may control how they come out as well, just to make it seem like it is maybe a bit more dramatic than it is. And also what's interesting is, if you think about the German and the UK reports, Paul Joyce and the others, they always seem just a little bit behind the German reports, don't they? The way it comes out like 1 or 2 days later. Those are the three things that have stood out for me. The other thing is to say, it makes it interesting for us to discuss. I get the way people can be frustrated by it. I totally understand that. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. But as long as Wirtz and Kirkez are at the AXA for the 1st of July, this will all be forgotten soon enough.
Yeah, that's it. And like I said, this first transfer window closure becomes relevant to our last Liverpool story. Not so much this one at all, if we're being honest, much as we'd like it to be. But looking ahead to the next window, and then we'll actually have a quick word on Konate before we go to that last story about, what might be getting quite pressing with this window. We're hoping that Kerkez and Wirtz join Frimpong and that we have this incredible opening to our bit of business. Yeah. Window 2 is going to be dependent 100% on how many we can sell and at what price. But there is a lot of business that still needs doing. There are a lot of areas of the team that still need addressing. Like, if we're being 100% honest, an impressive left-sided attacker was not top of everybody's list, So this is quite interesting, because there were screaming areas elsewhere, like right down the middle of the attack, like probably a centre half, if the business that's looking like might get done in that department. What do we know so far about potential window 2 business, or what can we say about it, really, given the fact that we don't know yet what our budget is, because we don't know yet what kind of money can be earned from what players we can sell?
It's funny there, John P saying, please don't mention a certain Newcastle winger. Okay, I will try my best when we talk about window 2 then. So, yeah, I think the premise of window 1, and it may run into window 2 or a little bit longer, but I think no one had us spending, as you said, the best part of 200 million. No one had us before the summer, because people were always, we've heard big summer, massive spend before, but it looks a realistic possibility. So then, as you move to window 2, we're still a smartly run club, quote unquote. So the books have got to be balanced, haven't they? You've got to sell players and look to move players on. We know Arne Slot is not interested in working with 25, 26. He's been clear on that. That's not how he's going to operate. It's a small squad where he wants everyone. And it's interesting, I think, from all the stories, all the things we've seen, quite understandably, we all kind of thought and were hoping still there was going to be a Saudi golden goose for us again, didn't we, Trev? Thinking that, come on, we know the players. We've seen all the Diaz reports, as we talked about last show just gone, and Al Nasser coming in. So we'll wait to see if that comes to fruition. And Darwin had been talked about. And even today, everyone's been manifesting this a little bit, haven't they? Because when Victor Osimhen rejects Al Hilal, and we'll talk about the Saudi situation, everyone's like, this is it. They're going to come back in for Darwin, and people jumped on these stories. I'm going to be honest, from sort of digging into it all day, absolutely nada reliable that the Saudis are in for Darwin in this window one at all. Just, I would love to be able to tell you people, this is bang on what's on the screen. We're going to get the hit. This is going to be reinvested. No, nothing on that at all. In fact, to the contrary. And being honest, the latest bit of digging, it kind of goes back to what we said a few weeks ago. Do you remember we mentioned that Atletico were in for him, Diego Simeone? It does seem that maybe Darwin might well have his heart on a return to Spain, where his family is, where he's played before, which also then means in terms of, yeah, you could say it could be a sale, but we know if it is Atletico Madrid, they're going to give us a lot less than Al Hilal or a Saudi team would. So that comes into the mix then as well. We talked about Elliott being sold, so you replenish your funds there. The other one is Luis Diaz, isn't it? And again, this sits on kind of not a knife edge, but you're just wondering now because Barca came in, as we talked about last show, and did a stupid offer. So we said, no, go away. Liverpool purposely put all those stories in the press to be like, we're not messing around with this low balling. We're prepared to keep him. And by the way, we're not going to give Luis Diaz a contract renewal either, just to be absolutely crystal clear. And then, I don't know if I've got it up, actually. I've not got this one. But Diaz talked about it, didn't it, in the press conference, saying, you know, we'll look at options. We're seeing what's on the market, a renewal. He mentioned that it's not coming. So Luis Diaz now has a choice. You stay at Liverpool, you will not get a renewal. I get Barcelona's your first choice, but they're messing around with stupid offers and they're not going to offer anything like the Saudis are or what we deem to be Luis Diaz's true value. So Liverpool are not going to budge on that unless the actual money comes from Barcelona, which you wouldn't bet a single penny on, would you, in all honesty, right now? So that comes into the mix. So you're hoping, put the Saudi bid on the table, and then he's got a call to make, hasn't he? Stay at Liverpool. You probably prefer to do that in a footballing sense, but no renewal. Go to Saudi. You don't really want to do that in the footballing sense, but your wages are probably going to get trebled, aren't they? And you'll get that contract you've been seeking for a while. But it's just interesting that almost at the start of the summer, the outline looked like we could do business. And Saudis were going to be our golden goose, weren't they, for Diaz and Nunez? And all of a sudden now, there's question marks against both of those all of a sudden. And now you're just wondering, Liverpool will have contingencies. It's not like this derails everything completely. But you just wonder what the impact will be, the knock-on effect, when we get to window 2, don't you?
You absolutely do. And window 2 is going to be completely and utterly dictated by what available funds there are. And I think it's important here that we just talk about what you and I spoke about briefly before the mics went live on this one, is we know that Darwin was willing to make the move to Saudi at Christmas, but things have changed quite dramatically for Darwin. He has that medal in his pocket now. Granted, it was diminishing returns from him in a spectacular fashion post his being forced to stay when he wanted to make that move because the club couldn't get their target of Osimhen in. Things have changed, and there's no way Atleti's interest hasn't turned his head. Luis Diaz is in a very similar position in that he will think of himself as a certain level of footballer, like no doubt Darwin Nunez will, and he will want to play in a league that reflects that. Where we thought we might have something going for us was how many people can say no to that massive bag of cash. And it looks now from the latest things that neither of our two boys are exactly biting the hands off anyone. And as you said, the interest is not even being necessarily put forward from any of these big clubs. So I think, whereas if we were being honest, if the big move for Darwin Nunez to a Saudi club was to happen, it probably needs to happen in the next 24 hours. I don't mean to sound alarmist, but it's probably going to be from a club who's looking to get him involved early. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it It's one of those, you never know for definite, but I'm leaning towards that because if you look at the Saudi clubs, that Al Hilal, they're going to be in the Club World Cup. They were clearly looking for a big name striker. That's why they tried for Osimhen and others, as we'll come to later on in the Saudi section. So you feel like, and it was Al Hilal that had been mentioned for Darwin, isn't it? So you thought that seemed the move, that seemed the right one. Then the other clubs that have been mentioned with Darwin, the only other Saudi one was Al Nassr, the one that Ronaldo's at. And to be honest, because of that move fell through, they bought Juan Duran, didn't they, from Aston Villa for about 75 million. They've got Ronaldo. So, I mean, I won't pretend I know anything like the formation or anything that Al Nassr plays, but it's hard to see them wanting Darwin. So all of a sudden, we're not going to pretend to be any Saudi football experts, but we're not naming a team anymore that seems to be in for him, doesn't he? Or have him as an urgent need. And there's no Club World Cup to go for it at the same time. So you're just a little bit like struggling to see it. And maybe others know another team that have been linked with him. But being honest, from the digging we've done, those two clubs, it's looking not impossible, but just less and less likely, isn't it?
Yeah, and therefore the potential for Liverpool incoming cash is very much reduced if those moves don't happen. And I think people need to get their heads around that because there's too many kind of football manager types making comments on a regular basis as if they're just deals that you do sort of in the ether. These are men who have their own interests and desires and passions and ambitions. And they're two very good footballers. And a lot of people would say, Dave, that if the Luis Diaz situation doesn't work out in terms of us forcing the hand of some club to either pay up or you stay here, you don't get your move and you don't get your renewed or your improved conditions, you just see out your contract. A lot of people would say, well, Diaz at 50 grand a week for the next 2 years is very good value and maybe the club could consider doing that. But of course, the human aspect is, what kind of a human have you got left there who's playing for a club he feels he's undervalued at, not respected at? What's the rainbow at the end of that tunnel for him? There's so these are very complicated ongoing situations. But like you said, man, it's going to have a massive impact one way or the other on our budget. Another thing that's going to have a massive impact on our budget is how much money we're paying in wages. And the Ibrahima Konate wages were the ones that most people were focusing on because they were the ones in the news from when we started doing these shows, actually, towards the end of the season. We had somewhat positive news, or at least not negative news, or words from the player himself that could be interpreted in a positive fashion if you wish to. However, there doesn't seem to be any great updates, and we know that our lot don't mind waiting till the very, very last moment to do deals when it comes to contracts. So maybe this is another one we can't get too upset about yet.
Because it goes all the way back to a couple of weeks ago, doesn't it? When Konate spoke to say his agent had gone into the club and they've spoken with the club. So we all kind of hope for little developments where we were thinking like, come on then. What's happening, and trying to dig around on this because it's still completely silent, isn't it? Konate's away on international duty. And being honest, the only bit I got in it that nothing really seemed to move with the talks at all in terms of his agent's been quite clear that Real Madrid have been in his ear. PSG, as we said, have been in his ear. So if you do want him to stay, Liverpool, pony up and pony up hard type of thing. There doesn't seem to be really any bending. And I suppose in one way, not good for us, but I get it from Konate. Because if you have got, as we said before, Real Madrid in your ear, if you have got PSG in your ear, promising you all these riches, free transfers, then you're not going to settle for maybe a far lower contract, even though, and quite rightly, Liverpool will see it as, listen, we're going to more than double your wages here. That's what you're asking for. But I get it. The only wonder now is, and I'm being honest from all the noises, and I want to be wrong on this as I'm saying it, please, people. We don't want to ever bring you bad news, but there's not really good noises around this particularly. So you start to get to wonder to the point, do Liverpool, as we've talked about, sell now, but then PSG and the others will know they can lowball it with a year left? And what option have Liverpool got if they demand a sale now? which then leaves them to the other option of, do they run Konate down for a free? We've seen them do that. Think, well, if we get another year off a top quality centre half and a title, everyone's happy and we move on. All we can say on Konate is, and again, hope to be wrong, hope something develops with this, but the noises from that agent meeting don't seem to have moved anything on at all, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it just looks like the same story as before. And again, we are not people to preach patience. That's not what we do. You do you, lose your head if you want. But it's probably not going to be any good because they just seem to work to the beat of their own drum here on these things. I'm going to queue up our European chat. Do you want to acknowledge our 3 super chatters there, Dave, just before we move to Europe?
Yeah, absolutely. So we said about John P and the Newcastle winger. I managed to get away with that, John. Daryl, if you put the super chat in there, mate, Daryl Merry, there's nothing actually showing apologies. So if you do put the question on the screen, I will put that on. But Tam has put a bit in there. We realised how cheap Turkey was too late. I think we are looking for a way out. Edwards just signed pretty quickly once it's public. Lavia all over again. So it's all about opinions. And I've got to be honest, I don't agree with anything like that because as the reporting came out from Ornstein and the others, Arne Slot went to the south of France to speak to Turkey before they made the move for Wirtz. They were looking at options, weren't they? And we've talked about contingencies that way. They've just decided, quite rightly, to go for Wirtz because he's a better player. So, just to be clear, if City could have got Wirtz, they would have done. They've just then put out the PR to say, oh, he's too much. Remember, this is a club that spent 100 million on Jack Grealish. So I don't think we're looking for a way out either there. I think we're just trying to get deals done. And Lavia was the bit of the panic, wasn't it? Once we couldn't get Caicedo, so go to plan B publicly. And we got embarrassed on that a second time because Chelsea had all that money waiting to go on a mad, I think 8-9 year deal he got, wasn't it, in the end? So that's what swayed it. So just personally, all opinions, but yeah, struggling to agree with that one, to be honest.
And just to go back to the Konate thing, one question I had for you just before we move to Europe. I think somebody said it in the chats there, but it was something that crossed my mind as well. It's gone very quiet, hasn't it, in the Liverpool links to defenders? Probably because all the focus is on the big name of Wirtz, and Kerkez has been such a high-profile link as well. And before that, Frimpong was. But with the Konate situation the way it is, with Jarell Quansah not 100% definitely going to be at the club because they might fancy him an asset, with the fact that Joe Gomez may be on the move as well. You add Konate into that, we have to be in the market for a defender, you would imagine, and there's very little, isn't there?
Yeah, it's a tough one, the centre-back situation, because Quansah's just about to play for England in the Euro under-21s, isn't he? So he's got a month there. But if they do want to sell him, brilliant shot window for him, isn't it? Good regular appearances, time, so that comes into the mix. So nothing's happening with Quansah until that's finished, which is right at the end of June, I think it is. So early July into that one. Konate, as we said, you almost feel, and we don't know for definite, but you almost feel that the club want to get to the point where, are we renewing or can't we do this deal? And then we'll make a call on what we do, as in run it down, sell, and go from there. So there's still a bit of work to be done on that. Joe Gomez as well, the other one. Again, it seems to have gone quiet on Joe Gomez, but I kind of get it a little bit. I adore Joe Gomez as a player. He seems obviously a great guy, but I like him as a player and what he does. Think, a good, honest pro. What club right now would take a big gamble on Joe Gomez with his injury record and how he's just ended the season injured as well? You can't imagine they're all going. What I mean by that, and I adore him as a player, so it's not being derogatory. I could well imagine that Joe Gomez is almost people's plan C or plan D, if that makes sense. That was a bit of the, the info that we had around him. So there is big question marks around a lot of our centre-backs. And I do think that is one that everyone expects us. I expect us, as we both do, to make a move eventually. but things are going to have to play out a little bit into window 2 for anything to be decided.